I never told my billionaire CEO ex-husband about our daughter until she needed a father figure to save her from foster care. Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision so massive that you knew, no matter what you chose, nothing would ever be the same again? That's exactly where I found myself on a cold Tuesday morning, standing in the marble lobby of Drake Industries, clutching a worn manila folder against my chest like it was the only thing keeping me upright. The rain hammered against those floor-to-ceiling windows, each drop like a drumbeat counting down to the moment that would change 3 lives forever. Inside that folder was a secret I'd been carrying for 6 long years, a secret that had shaped every decision I'd made, every lie I'd told. Every night I'd lain awake, wondering if I'd made the right choice. A secret about a little girl with distinctive grey-blue eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest room. A 6-year-old who loved stars and painted constellations and asked questions about the universe that I couldn't begin to answer. My daughter, his daughter, our daughter that he never knew existed. Welcome back to Mr. Steele Rich Stories, and if you're new here, welcome to a community where we share real stories about life, love, and the impossible choices that shape us. Before we dive deep into this story, I need to take a moment to thank every single one of you. We just hit 900 subscribers, and we're racing toward that incredible milestone of 1,000 and beyond. Your support has been absolutely overwhelming, and it means everything to me and to this channel. Now, here's where I need your help. If this story touches your heart today, and I have a feeling it's going to reach deep, I'm asking you to hit that share button right now. Don't wait until the end. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with a friend who's facing impossible choices, or someone who believes in second chances. Share it with anyone who's ever kept a secret that felt too big to tell. Your share could literally change someone's life today, and it helps us reach more people with these powerful stories. So please, take 5 seconds right now and share this video. I'll wait. My name is Skylar Hart, and I'm about to tell you about the biggest mistake I ever made, and the desperate choice that forced me to finally make it right. 6 years ago, I walked away from my husband. Not just walked away, I disappeared. Vanished like smoke in the night, with nothing but a hastily scribbled note and a single suitcase. I left behind our apartment, our life together, and a marriage that had lasted barely 10 months. But I took something with me that he didn't even know existed. I was 8 weeks pregnant with his child, and I never told him. For 6 years, I convinced myself I'd made the right choice. I built a life for my daughter and me in Portland, a good life, a happy life, full of love and laughter and second-hand furniture we'd painted together on Saturday mornings. I built a business from nothing, created stability, and gave my little girl everything she needed. Everything except the truth about her father. Everything except the chance to know the man whose eyes she saw every time she looked in a mirror. I told myself I was protecting her, protecting him, protecting everyone from the complications of a family that didn't fit the mold. But the truth, the real truth I'm finally brave enough to admit, is that I was protecting myself. From judgment. From failure. From the terrifying possibility that I wasn't good enough for his world. And now, standing in this lobby with my hands shaking and my heart pounding so hard, I could barely breathe. I was about to face the consequences of that choice. Because my daughter, our daughter Luna, was in danger. Real, immediate danger of being taken away from me by Child Protective Services and placed into foster care. And the only person in the entire world who could save her was the man I'd been hiding her from for 6 years. The billionaire CEO who didn't even know he was a father. My ex-husband, Ethan Drake. You might be wondering how someone keeps a secret like that. How does a mother look at her child every single day? A child with her father's distinctive eyes, his sharp intelligence, his curious mind, and know that somewhere out there is a man who's missing everything. Trust me, I've asked myself that question every single day for 6 years. Every birthday candle Luna blew out. Every first day of school I took alone. Every time she asked about her daddy with those heartbreaking eyes full of hope and confusion. And I'm about to tell you the whole story. Not because I'm proud of what I did. I'm not. Not because I think I made the right choice. I didn't. but because sometimes the most important lessons come from our biggest mistakes. Because sometimes redemption requires confessing the things we're most ashamed of. And because if you've ever made a choice you regretted, if you've ever been so scared that you ran instead of fought, if you've ever wondered whether it's too late to make things right, then this story is for you. The elevator doors slid open with a quiet chime that sounded like a funeral bell in my ears. I stepped inside and caught my reflection in the polished metal walls. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Dark circles shadowed my eyes from sleepless nights and the side effects of medications. That was supposed to be helping, but mostly just made me feel worse. My auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail instead of the wild, free style I used to wear when Ethan and I first fell in love. I looked exhausted. I looked scared. I looked like someone who'd been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for far too long. But most of all, I looked like a mother who would do absolutely anything, face anyone, confess anything, humble herself in any way necessary to save her child. And that's exactly what I was about to do. As the elevator climbed toward the executive suite on the 40th floor, my mind drifted to Luna, my beautiful, brilliant 6-year-old daughter, who was probably sitting in my neighbor's apartment, right now, working on her homework or reading one of her chapter books about space exploration. Luna, who'd looked up at me this morning with those eyes, Ethan's eyes, and asked a question that had nearly broken me. "Mummy, are you going to see my daddy today?" I'd frozen with the coffee mug halfway to my lips, my hands trembling, so badly that the liquid sloshed dangerously close to the rim. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because you look scared and brave at the same time," she'd said with that unsettling wisdom she sometimes displayed, making her seem far older than her 6 years. That's how people look in my books when they're about to do something really important, something that scares them, but they do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. "Is that what you're doing, Mummy? The right thing?" I'd knelt down to her level, smoothing back the wild auburn curls that she'd inherited from me, looking into those distinctive grey-blue eyes that were all Ethan. "Yes, baby. I'm going to do the right thing." Finally, she'd hugged me then, her small arms wrapping around my neck with surprising strength. "Don't be scared, Mummy. Everything's going to be okay." If only I could believe that with the same certainty my 6-year-old daughter did. The elevator chimed again, 35th floor, 36th, climbing higher, and higher toward a confrontation I'd been avoiding for 6 years. My chest felt tight. My breathing was shallow. The folder in my hands felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every document inside a piece of evidence in the trial of my own guilt. Inside that folder was Luna's birth certificate, listing only me as a parent. Medical records showing a healthy 6-year-old with her father's blood type. School reports documenting a child reading at a 4th grade level in 1st grade. Paintings of constellations created by small hands with extraordinary spatial reasoning. And the letter, that awful official letter from Child Protective Services, that had turned my entire world upside down 3 weeks ago. The letter said, unless I could demonstrate stable family support and adequate care arrangements, they would remove Luna from my custody and place her in emergency foster care while I underwent treatment for my condition. Foster care. My baby girl, who'd never spent a night away from me except for sleepovers at friends' houses, ripped away and placed with strangers because I was too sick to care for her properly and too proud to ask for help until it was almost too late. 40th floor. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that screamed understated wealth, all glass, and chrome and sleek modern furniture that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. A receptionist with perfectly styled hair and a professional smile looked up from her computer, and I watched that smile flicker slightly when she took in my appearance. My bargain store jacket, my off-brand handbag, my obvious nervousness. I didn't belong here, and we both knew it. But I wasn't here for me. I was here for Luna. I walked to the reception desk on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. "I need to see Ethan Drake," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded when everything inside me was screaming. "Do you have an appointment?" The receptionist's tone was polite but dismissive, her fingers already moving toward her phone, probably to call security to escort out another desperate person, hoping to get a meeting with a billionaire CEO. No, but Mr. Drake's schedule is completely booked today, she interrupted smoothly, delivering what was clearly a well-practiced line. If you'd like to leave your contact information, I can have his assistant reach out to schedule something for next month. Or you can submit a request through our website. Tell him Skylar Hart is here. My voice came out stronger than I felt, cutting through her practiced dismissal. Tell him it's about the 10 months we were married 7 years ago. Tell him it's about something he deserves to know. Something that can't wait another day. Something that can't wait another hour. The receptionist's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly, probably the most genuine emotion she'd shown all week. She studied me more carefully now, reassessing. Her hand hovered over the phone. Please, I added, and I didn't care that my voice cracked. Didn't care that I sounded desperate. I was desperate. Tell him Skylar is here, and it's important. He'll see me. I know he will. She picked up her phone and spoke quietly into it, her eyes never leaving my face. I watched her expression change. Surprise, then curiosity, then something that might have been sympathy. When she hung up, her entire demeanor had shifted. Mr. Drake will see you, she said, and now her voice held a warmth that hadn't been there before. But he has a board meeting in 15 minutes. You'll need to be brief. 15 minutes. I had 15 minutes to explain 6 years of secrets and lies. 15 minutes to ask the impossible. 15 minutes to convince the man I'd abandoned that he needed to save the daughter he'd never known existed. 15 minutes to change all of our lives forever. Third door on the right, the receptionist said, gesturing down a hallway, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the Seattle skyline. He's waiting for you. I walked down that hallway feeling like I was walking toward my own execution. Each step echoed in the silence. Through the windows, I could see the city spread out below, thousands of people going about their normal Tuesday completely. Unaware that in one office on the 40th floor, a woman was about to confess to one of the worst things a person could do. I'd stolen 6 years from a father. 6 years of watching his daughter grow, of hearing her first words and seeing her first steps and holding her through nightmares and celebrating her triumphs. 6 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and silly jokes and profound questions. 6 years of love that he could never get back. And now I was here to ask him to forgive the unforgivable and save the daughter he'd never met from a system that would tear her away from the only parent she'd ever known. The door was solid oak with a brass nameplate that read, Ethan Drake, Chief Executive Officer. I raised my hand to knock, and for one wild second I considered running. Turning around, getting back in that elevator, driving back to Portland, and pretending this day had never happened. Finding some other solution, any other solution, that didn't require me to face what I'd done. But then, I thought of Luna's face this morning. Don't be scared, Mummy. Everything's going to be okay. I knocked. Come in. His voice. After 6 years of silence, I heard his voice, and it was exactly the same, deep and controlled, and unmistakably Ethan. I opened the door and stepped into an office that was everything I'd expected. Massive. Impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing that same stunning view of Seattle. A desk that looked like it cost more than my car. Awards and accolades lining one wall, documenting the empire he'd built in the years since I'd left. And standing at those windows, his back to me, hands in his pockets as he looked out at the city he'd conquered. Ethan Drake. 6 years had changed him. Even from behind, I could see it. His shoulders were broader under that perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair had the slightest touch of silver at the temples now, visible even from across the room. He stood with the confidence of a man who'd built something extraordinary, who commanded respect in boardrooms and conference calls around the world. But when he turned around, when those eyes met mine across the expanse of his office, I saw something else, something that no amount of success or money or power could hide. Loneliness. Skylar. My name on his lips after 6 years of silence. It sounded like an accusation and a question, and a memory all rolled into one word. Time seemed to stop as we stared at each other. His face was exactly as I remembered. Strong jawline, intense eyes, the kind of striking features that had once made me forget my own name when he smiled at me. But there were lines there now that hadn't been there before. Stress lines around his eyes, a tightness in his jaw that spoke of years spent grinding through 18-hour workdays and impossible demands. He looked successful. He looked powerful. He looked like he'd achieved everything he'd set out to achieve. And he looked utterly, completely alone. 6 years, he said finally, his voice carefully controlled but with an edge that could cut glass. Not a word, not a phone call, not an email, not even a message through a lawyer. 6 years of complete silence. And now you show up at my office, unannounced, like... He stopped himself, his hand running through his hair in a gesture. I remembered from late nights when he was trying to solve impossible problems. Why are you here, Skylar? What could possibly bring you here after all this time? This was it. The moment I'd been rehearsing in my head for 3 weeks, ever since I'd received that letter from CPS. I'd practiced 100 different ways to say it, 100 different approaches, 100 different opening lines, but standing here, seeing him again, feeling the weight of 6 years of secrets, pressing down on me, all my practiced words evaporated like morning mist. So, I did the only thing I could do. I opened the manila folder with trembling hands and pulled out the photograph I'd printed just for this moment. Luna's school picture from 2 months ago, taken on a sunny September morning when she'd insisted on wearing her favorite shirt, the one with all the planets in perfect order from the sun. Her wild auburn hair refused to be tamed despite my best efforts that morning, curling around her face in a halo of chaos. Her smile was bright and gap-toothed and full of joy, and her eyes, those distinctive grey-blue eyes that were unmistakably Drake eyes, stared at the camera with intelligence and curiosity and innocence. I held out the photograph and my voice came out barely above a whisper. Her name is Luna. She just turned 6 years old last month. She loves astronomy and reads at a 4th grade level even though she's only in 1st grade. She paints abstract art that she says represents different constellations, and she asks questions about the universe that I can't begin to answer. She's brilliant and funny and kind, and she has your eyes when she looks at the world with wonder. I took a shaky breath, forcing myself to meet Ethan's stare as I spoke the words that would change everything. And she's your daughter, Ethan. She's ours, and I never told you she existed. The silence that followed my confession was deafening. I watched Ethan take the photograph from my outstretched hand, his fingers trembling slightly, the first crack in his carefully controlled CEO exterior. He stared at Luna's face like he was seeing a ghost, and maybe, in a way, he was. The ghost of a life he never knew he had. The ghost of 6 years of birthdays and first steps and bedtime stories that had happened without him. His thumb traced over Luna's face in the photo with a gentleness that made my chest ache. How? The word came out rough, barely controlled. When did you... He stopped, his analytical mind clearly working through the timeline, trying to make sense of something that probably felt impossible. Then his eyes snapped up to meet mine, and I saw the exact moment understanding crashed over him like a wave. You were pregnant. When you left, you were pregnant with my child, and you didn't tell me. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation, and he had every right to make it. Yes, I whispered, because what else could I say? There was no softening this truth, no way to make it hurt less, no words that would make 6 years of deception somehow acceptable. But then what? His voice rose slightly, and I could hear 6 years of missed moments crashing down on him all at once. The control was slipping now, raw emotion bleeding through. What could possibly justify keeping my child from me for 6 years, Skylar? What reason could you possibly have for... His voice broke, and he turned away from me, setting the photograph down on his desk with extreme care as if it might shatter. And there it was. The question I'd been dreading. The question I'd asked myself 1,000 times in the middle of sleepless nights when Luna was sick with a fever and I was terrified and alone. The question that had no good answer because there was no justification, only reasons. And reasons aren't the same as excuses. Let me tell you how we started, I said quietly, needing him to understand the context even if it didn't excuse what I'd done. I need you to understand where we were, who we were, before I made the worst decision of my life. I watched his jaw clench, the muscle jumping beneath his skin. But he nodded curtly, turning back to face me. So I began. Do you remember the business conference in Seattle? 7 years ago, that convention center downtown with the terrible coffee and the panel discussions that went on for hours. Something flickered across his face, memory, longing, pain all mixed together. Of course I remember. How could either of us forget? It had been one of those rare magical moments when the universe seemed to conspire in your favor. When timing and circumstance and pure chance aligned to create something extraordinary. I'd been 25 years old, a junior marketing consultant, barely a year out of graduate school, terrified but determined to make my mark. I'd been invited to present a strategy proposal to a room full of executives and entrepreneurs who'd forgotten more about business than I'd ever learned. Most of them were checking their phones or having side conversations while I presented, clearly dismissing the young woman in the bargain store suit who was trying to tell them about innovative digital marketing strategies. But there'd been one person in that room who'd looked at me differently. One person who'd leaned forward in his seat, who'd taken notes, who'd asked intelligent questions during the Q&A that showed he'd actually listened to every word I'd said. Ethan Drake. You approached me afterward, I continued, watching his face as the memories surfaced. You introduced yourself and asked if I'd be willing to grab coffee and discuss my methodology in more detail. I thought you were trying to pick me up at first. You were wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and I couldn't imagine why someone like you would be interested in anything I had to say, but you said yes anyway, Ethan said quietly. I said yes, I confirmed. And that coffee turned into a 3-hour conversation about business and innovation and ambition. You told me about your vision for Drake Industries, how you wanted to build something that mattered, that changed lives, through technology. I told you about my dream of opening my own consultancy someday, of proving that you didn't need family, connections or wealth to make it in the business world. If you were smart enough and worked hard enough. You said something that day that stuck with me, Ethan murmured, and I could hear the wistfulness in his voice. You said that success without purpose was just noise, that the only achievements worth having were the ones that made the world better for other people. I'd forgotten I'd said that. Forgotten a lot of things about those early days when everything felt possible, and the future stretched out before us like an endless highway. We saw each other every chance we could after that conference, I continued. You'd drive to Portland on weekends when you could get away from work. I'd take the train to Seattle on Friday nights and come back Sunday evening exhausted but happy. It was intense and consuming and real, Ethan finished, his voice rougher now. It was real, Skylar, every moment of it. At least I thought it was. It was real, I insisted, feeling tears burn the back of my eyes. That's what made everything that came after so devastating. Because I loved you, Ethan. I loved you so much that sometimes it scared me. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and watch you sleep and think about how much power you had to hurt me, and I'd be terrified. We'd dated for 4 months before Ethan proposed. 4 months of stolen weekends and late-night phone calls and emails that stretched across the distance between our 2 cities. 4 months of falling deeper and deeper in love until I couldn't imagine my life without him. He'd proposed on the Seattle waterfront on a clear spring evening with the city lights, reflected in the water and ferry boats moving across the sound like slow-motion dancers. He'd gotten down on one knee right there on the pier, completely unself-conscious about the tourists and joggers passing by, and he'd told me that I was the only person who made him feel like he could be more than just his father's son, more than just the heir to the Drake fortune. You make me want to be better, he'd said. Kinder, more present, more human. Marry me, Skylar. Build a life with me. I'd said yes without hesitation, and 2 months later we were married in a small ceremony at the courthouse with just a few friends as witnesses. His father hadn't attended. That should have been my first warning sign. We got married 6.5 years ago, I said, watching Ethan's face carefully. "That small ceremony in June, remember? You wore that navy suit, and I wore the white dress I'd found at a vintage shop. We were so happy that day, so sure that we could make it work despite everything. Despite my father's disapproval," Ethan said bitterly. "Despite the fact that he thought you were completely wrong for me. I didn't know how much he disapproved at first," I admitted. "You shielded me from a lot of it in the beginning, but I started to figure it out." We'd moved into a beautiful apartment in downtown Seattle after the wedding. Not the penthouse Ethan lives in now, but a smaller place with big windows and exposed brick that we'd filled with second-hand furniture and plants and books. For the first few months of our marriage, it had been everything I'd dreamed of. We'd cooked dinner together when Ethan got home from work, talking about our days and making plans for the future. We'd explored the city on weekends, finding hidden coffee shops and bookstores and restaurants. We'd stayed up late watching movies and making love, and believing that our love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. But then, the merger started. "The Tech Mission merger," Ethan said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "That's when everything changed." "That's when you changed," I corrected as gently as I could. "Or maybe that's when the pressure became too much to hide anymore. Suddenly you were working 18, 20-hour days. You'd leave before I woke up and come home after midnight. When you were home, you weren't really there. You were distracted, stressed, consumed by the deal. I'd try to talk to you about it, and you'd say you were fine, that it was just temporary, that once the merger went through, things would go back to normal." "It was a crucial time for the company," Ethan said defensively, but his voice lacked conviction. "Everything my father and I had worked toward depended on that merger going through. The technology patents alone would have put Drake Industries years ahead of our competitors. I thought you understood how important it was." "I did understand it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Or at least I tried to. But understanding something intellectually is completely different from living with it every single day. Different from eating dinner alone every night while your food got cold. Different from waking up at 3 in the morning to an empty bed and finding you passed out at your desk with contracts spread around you like fallen leaves. Different from feeling like I was married to a ghost who happened to share my address." I watched guilt flash across Ethan's face, but I pressed on because he needed to understand all of it. Every piece of the puzzle that had led to my terrible decision. I tried to be supportive. I really did. I brought you dinner at the office when you forgot to eat. I cancelled plans with friends so I could be there when you had rare free evenings. I told myself it was temporary, just like you said. That once the merger was done, we'd reconnect. We'd remember how to be married to each other, instead of just two people who happened to sleep in the same apartment. But then, there was my father, Ethan said, his voice going cold. "What did he do, Skylar?" This was the part I'd been dreading. The part that had planted the seeds of doubt that would eventually grow into the decision to leave. "He called me about 4 months into our marriage," I said carefully. "You were in Tokyo for a week of negotiations, and I was in Seattle alone. Your father's assistant called and said he wanted to take me to lunch, to get to know his daughter-in-law better." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I was naive enough to think he actually meant it. Maybe he was finally warming up to me, accepting that I was part of Ethan's life now. "What did he say to you?" Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet now, and I could see his hands clenching into fists at his sides. I took a deep breath, remembering that lunch like it was yesterday. The expensive restaurant with its white tablecloths and hushed conversations. His father's cold eyes as he delivered each cutting remark with surgical precision. "He told me that I was holding you back," I said, forcing myself to meet Ethan's eyes. "That you were distracted and soft because of me. He said you were destined for greatness, but that you were too busy, trying to be a good husband, to focus on what really mattered. Building the Drake legacy and living up to your potential. He told me that if I really loved you, I'd let you go. That I'd realize I wasn't the right kind of wife for a future billionaire CEO." Ethan's face had gone pale, but I continued. "He said I came from the wrong background, had the wrong connections, brought nothing to the table except," and I'll never forget these exact words, "working-class sentimentality and misguided idealism." He told me that every hour you spent worrying about our Marriage was an hour you weren't spending building your empire, that I was essentially stealing your future from you piece by piece, and that the kindest thing I could do would be to disappear and let you focus on becoming the man you were meant to be. Skylar, Ethan started, his voice breaking, but I held up a hand. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty or to blame your father for everything I did. I'm telling you because those words planted seeds of doubt that grew every single day. Every time you missed dinner, I heard his voice saying you were distracted because of me. Every time I found you asleep at your desk at dawn, I wondered if I was the reason you were burning yourself out, trying to build your empire and maintain a marriage at the same time, being pulled in two directions and succeeding at neither. I pulled out another photograph from my folder, this one of Ethan and me on our wedding day. We looked impossibly young, impossibly happy, impossibly naive about what the future would bring. And then I found out I was pregnant. The words hung in the air between us like a confession, like a judgment, like the truth that had been 6 years in the making. It was about 8 months into our marriage, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper now. I'd been feeling sick for a couple of weeks, exhausted, nauseous, emotional. I thought it was stress from watching our marriage slowly crumble. But then I missed my period, and I bought a pregnancy test on my lunch break, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open the package. I could still remember that afternoon so vividly, sitting on the bathroom floor of our apartment, holding that little plastic stick, watching 2 pink lines appear and feeling my entire world shift on its axis. I took 3 tests, just to be absolutely sure, I said. And then I just sat there on the bathroom floor for over an hour, laughing and crying at the same time. I was going to be a mother. We were going to be parents. I imagined telling you, imagined. The look on your face when you realized we'd created a life together. I imagined us planning a nursery, picking out names, reading parenting books together. I imagined us becoming a real family. So why didn't you tell me? Ethan's voice was strained, and I could see tears gathering in his eyes even as he tried to maintain his composure. Why didn't you give me the chance to be happy about it? To be there for you? Because I came home that night, ready to tell you everything, and I found. You passed out at the dining room table at 3 in the morning. The memory was as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. Your laptop was open to a spreadsheet full of merger projections. Your phone was next to your head, and a text message from your father was on the screen. I could see it clearly. Don't disappoint me. Everything we've worked for depends on this deal. Don't let distractions derail your focus now. I watched that memory land on Ethan like a physical blow, saw him flinch as if I'd struck him. I stood there with one hand on my stomach where our baby was growing, our baby that you didn't even know existed yet. And I watched. You destroy yourself for a company and a father who demanded perfection and offered nothing but conditional approval in return. And I realized, or thought I realized, that a baby would be the ultimate distraction. That if you were already running yourself into the ground trying to meet your father, is impossible expectations, how could you possibly handle being a father yourself? How could you possibly be there for a child when you could barely be there for your wife? So you decided for me, Ethan said flatly, his voice devoid of emotion now. You decided I couldn't handle it, that I wouldn't want it. And you left. I decided I couldn't watch you destroy yourself, I said, my voice breaking. I decided that maybe your father was right. Maybe I was holding you back. Maybe you would be better off without me and all the complications I brought. So I wrote you that note saying I needed space to figure out who I was outside of being Mrs. Drake, and I packed a suitcase in the middle of the night, and I left. With my child, Ethan said, and the pain in those 3 words was unbearable. With our child, I whispered. With a baby, I convinced myself you didn't want and wouldn't have time for. With a daughter who deserved a present father, not one who would resent her for existing at the wrong time in his carefully planned life. Ethan picked up the photograph of Luna again, his hands shaking as he stared at the face of the daughter he'd never known. When he looked up at me, his eyes were bright with unshed tears, and his voice was raw with emotion. You should have told me, he said, each word carefully enunciated, as if he was trying very hard to maintain control. You should have given me the choice, Skylar. Maybe I would have made the wrong one at first. Maybe I would have panicked or been angry or felt overwhelmed. Maybe I would have been a terrible father in the beginning, spread too thin between my responsibilities and this unexpected blessing. But maybe having a daughter would have woken me up. Maybe it would have made me realize that building an empire means absolutely nothing if you have no one to share it with, no one to build it for. You took that choice away from me. You took 6 years of my daughter's life away from me. And I don't— His voice cracked completely. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that. I nodded, tears streaming down my face now, not bothering to wipe them away. I don't expect you to forgive me. I haven't forgiven myself. Every birthday, every milestone, every time Luna asked about her father, I felt the weight of what I'd stolen from both of you. But I need you to know that I genuinely believed I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting everyone. You from an obligation you didn't want, Luna from growing up, feeling like a burden to a father who resented her existence, myself from watching the man I loved slowly grow to hate me for trapping him with an unplanned pregnancy. I was wrong about all of it. I know that now. But at the time, scared and 26 years old and convinced I wasn't good enough for your world, I thought I was making the only choice I could. The confession hung between us in that office, high above Seattle, 6 years, of secrets and lies and misguided protection, finally spoken aloud. The rain continued to hammer against the windows, nature providing a soundtrack to the unraveling, of carefully constructed defenses and the exposure of wounds that had never properly healed. And in that moment, looking at Ethan's face, seeing the anger and the hurt and the longing and the grief all warring for dominance, I waited to see if the truth I should have told 6 years ago had come too late to matter. Tell me about her. Ethan's words caught me completely off guard. After the weight of my confession, after the raw anger and hurt I'd seen, in his eyes, I'd fully expected him to throw me out of his office, to call security and have me escorted from the building, to tell me he wanted nothing to do with me or the catastrophic mess I'd created. Instead, he was asking about Luna, and beneath the carefully controlled tone, I could hear something else in his voice, a desperate hunger, the hunger of a father who'd missed 6 years and wanted to know everything. I sank into one of the leather chairs across from his desk, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. What do you want to know? Everything. He sat down across from me, picking up Luna's photograph again, studying every detail of her face like he was trying to memorize it. Start from the beginning. I want to know everything I missed. So, I told him. And once I started, I couldn't stop. The words poured out of me like water from a broken dam. 6 years of memories, and moments and milestones that he should have been there for. I told him about moving back to Portland in the middle of the night, about staying with a college friend for the first 3 months until I could afford my own place, about working from home during my pregnancy, building my consultancy one client at a time while my belly grew larger, about going to ultrasound appointments alone, hearing the heartbeat. That sounded like galloping horses, and learning I was having a girl, about sitting in the hospital parking lot after that appointment, crying so hard I could barely breathe because Ethan should have been there to hear our daughter's heartbeat with me. I told him about the labor, 22 brutal hours that felt like an eternity, alone except for my friend who held my hand and brought me ice chips and tried her best to be supportive, about how I'd almost given in and called him 100 times during those endless hours of pain, about holding Luna for the first time, this impossibly tiny human with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were already that distinctive, grey-blue shade, and feeling overwhelming love mixed with crushing guilt because her father wasn't there to meet her. I chose her name because she was born just after midnight, I explained softly. The nurses had dimmed the lights in the delivery room, and when they placed her on my chest, she just glowed in that soft lighting, like moonlight, like she'd brought her own luminescence into the world. And I remembered, my voice caught. I remembered you telling me once that your mother used to call you her little moon when you were young. So I named her Luna. I wanted her to have a piece of you, even if you didn't know she existed. Ethan's hand tightened on the photograph, his knuckles going white. He opened his mouth, as if to speak, then closed it again, seeming unable to find words adequate for the emotions crossing his face. "She looked like you from the very first day," I continued. "The nurses kept commenting on her eyes. They said they'd never seen such a distinctive color on a newborn. Usually babies are born with blue or gray eyes that change later, but Luna's were already that exact shade, your shade. And I knew that as she grew up, people would see the resemblance. That I'd eventually have to explain. But in those first few weeks, holding her and nursing her, learning to be a mother, I just felt grateful that I had this perfect piece of you to love." "What was she like?" Ethan asked, his voice rough. "As a baby, I mean. What was her personality?" "Curious," I said immediately, unable to help the smile that spread across my face despite everything. "Intensely, impossibly curious about everything. She barely slept for the first 6 months because she didn't want to miss anything. She'd stare at lights and shadows and faces, like she was conducting scientific research. She'd track movement with her eyes with this focused intensity that the pediatrician said was unusual for such a young infant." I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and scrolled through years of photos, turning the screen toward Ethan. She reached all her milestones early, rolled over at 3 months, sat up, unassisted at 5, walked at 9 months. By 18 months, she was speaking in complete sentences. By 2, she could count to 100 in English and was starting to learn numbers in other languages from educational videos. By 3, she was reading. Ethan took my phone carefully, his hands trembling as he scrolled through the images. Luna, as a toddler, with birthday cake smeared across her chubby cheeks. Luna's first day of preschool, looking impossibly tiny with an oversized backpack nearly as big as she was. Luna at the Science Museum, pressing her nose against the glass of an exhibit about the solar system, her eyes wide with wonder. Luna in our small apartment living room, surrounded by paintings she'd created, her hands and clothes covered in colorful paint. "She became obsessed with astronomy when she was 3, I explained, as Ethan studied each photo with laser focus. "We went to a children's museum that had a space exhibit, and she asked me why stars shine. I gave her the simple answer, because they're giant balls of hot gas, but she wanted to know more. She wanted to know what kind of gas and how hot, and why some stars were different colors than others. So we went to the library and came home with a stack of 10 books about space and stars and the universe. 10 books, Ethan repeated, and I heard something like awe creeping into his voice despite everything. And she made me read all of them to her that week, I continued. Multiple times. She absorbed every single word, every diagram, every concept. And then she started sharing what she'd learned with everyone. Kids at preschool, the librarian, the cashier at the grocery store. Her preschool teacher actually called me in for a conference because she thought Luna was being disruptive in class. Was she? Ethan asked, his eyes still fixed on the phone screen. Not exactly. She was correcting the teacher's simplifications about the solar system. The teacher had told the class that Pluto was the 9th planet, and Luna raised her hand and explained, very seriously for a 4-year-old, that Pluto had been reclassified as a dwarf planet in 2006, and that there are actually 5 recognized dwarf planets in our solar system. I laughed at the memory despite myself. The teacher didn't know whether to be impressed or annoyed. For the first time since I'd walked into his office, I saw the ghost of a smile touch Ethan's lips. That sounds like something I would have done at that age. My teachers loved and hated me in equal measure. She gets that from you, I said softly. That need for precision, for accuracy, for understanding things deeply rather than accepting surface-level explanations. She's relentless when she wants to learn something new. What else? Ethan asked, and I could hear the hunger in his voice again. He was drinking in every detail like someone dying of thirst. Tell me everything, Skylar. I need to know everything. So I told him more. I showed him videos on my phone, Luna at 4 years old, explaining the water cycle with hand gestures and scientific terminology that seemed absurd coming from someone so small. Luna at 5, reading aloud from a chapter book about a girl who travels to Mars, her voice confident and clear. Luna just last month, presenting her constellation paintings at a school art show, explaining to confused parents how each swirl and splash of color represented specific star formations. "She's creative in ways I never expected," I said. "She paints these abstract pieces that look like beautiful chaos to most people, but when she explains them, you realize there's incredible logic and structure underneath. This swirl represents the Andromeda Galaxy. This splash of silver is the Milky Way. These dots are planets in perfect order from the sun. She sees patterns in randomness, order in disorder." Ethan scrolled to a photo of one of Luna's paintings, a canvas covered in deep purples and blues and silvers, with carefully placed points of white that, once you knew what you were looking at, clearly represented constellations. "She's remarkable," he breathed. "She's stubborn," I added, with a mixture of pride and exasperation. "Definitely gets that from both of us. When she decides she wants to learn something, she won't stop until she's mastered it. Last year, she taught herself basic coding because she wanted to create a computer game about exploring the solar system. She watched tutorials online and practiced for hours until she'd built a simple program where you could click on different planets and learn facts about them. She taught herself to code at 5 years old." Ethan looked up at me, his expression torn between amazement and grief for all he'd missed. 5.5, I corrected, and the program was simple. Nothing revolutionary, but the fact that she had the focus and determination to teach herself something that complex at that age, that's all you, Ethan. He set my phone down carefully on the desk and leaned back in his chair, pressing his palms against his eyes like he was trying to hold himself together. "What else? Tell me who she is, Skylar. Not just what she can do, but who she is as a person." I thought about how to put Luna's essence into words, how to explain the beautiful, complicated human being she was becoming. "She's kind," I said finally. "Genuinely, deeply kind in ways that constantly surprise me. She shares her lunch with kids at school who forget theirs. She stands up for smaller children when they're being picked on, even though she's not particularly big herself. Last month, she saved all her birthday money, $63 that various relatives had given her, and asked me to drive her to the animal shelter. She wanted to donate it to help the dogs and cats there, because she said they needed it more than she needed toys." I watched Ethan's face as I spoke, and saw his expression soften with each detail. "She asks impossible questions," I continued. "Like, Mommy, if the universe is infinite, does that mean there are infinite versions of me? Or, if atoms are mostly empty space, why can't we walk through walls? Or, do you think there's a planet somewhere where kids get to stay up as late as they want?" She keeps me on my toes intellectually in ways I never expected from a 6-year-old. "Does she ask about me?" Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper, and I could hear the fear in it. Fear that his daughter had lived 6 years without missing him, without wondering about him, without caring that he wasn't there. "All the time," I admitted, and watched relief wash over his face. "She started asking when she was 4. We were at the park one afternoon, and she saw a father pushing his daughter on the swings. She stood there watching them for a long time, and then she looked up at me with those grey-blue eyes, your eyes, and she asked why she didn't have a daddy like the other kids. What did you tell her?" Ethan leaned forward, needing to know. I told her the truth, or at least a version of it. I remembered that conversation so clearly. Remembered kneeling down on the playground to be at her eye level. I told her that she absolutely had a daddy, that his name was Ethan, and that I had loved him very much. I told her that he lived far away and didn't know about her yet, but that didn't mean he didn't care. I told her that someday, when the time was right, she would get to meet him, and she accepted that. Ethan asked, skeptically. She was 4. She accepted it because she didn't really have a choice. My voice grew thick with emotion. "But she asked about you constantly after that. What's your favorite color? What kind of music do you like? Are you tall? Do you like books? Do you know about stars?" And I answered what I could, but there was so much I didn't know anymore. 6 years is a long time, Ethan. People change. I didn't know if you still loved Thai food or if you still read mystery novels. Before bed, or if you still listened to jazz when you were stressed. I do, Ethan said quietly. All of those things. I haven't changed as much as you might think. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 6 lost years pressing down on both of us. She made you cards, I said finally, needing him to know this, for Father's Day. Every year since she understood what Father's Day was, she's made you a card. She'd sit at our kitchen table with her markers and construction paper, creating these elaborate cards with drawings of stars and planets and families. And then she'd write inside them, "Dear Daddy, and I love you, and I hope I get to meet you someday." Ethan's composure finally cracked completely. A sob escaped him, raw and broken, and he covered his face with his hands. "Where are they?" he asked through his tears. "The cards. Where are they?" "In a box under her bed," I whispered. 7 of them. 7 Father's Day cards she made for a father she'd never met, hoping that someday she'd be able to give them to you. For a long moment, the only sound in that office was Ethan trying to control his breathing, trying to pull himself back together. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red and his face was wet with tears he hadn't bothered to wipe away. Last year on her birthday, I continued, needing him to know everything. She made a wish when she blew out her candles. I asked her what she wished for, and she said it was a secret. But this year, when she turned 6, she told me. She said she'd wished the same thing every year, that her daddy would somehow know she existed and come find us, that you'd just show up one day and be part of our lives. And instead, you kept her from me, Ethan said, but there was less anger in his voice now, just exhaustion and grief. Yes, I acknowledged. I kept her from you, and I kept you from her. And I told myself it was protection when really it was just cowardice. I was scared, Ethan. Scared of your father's judgment, scared of your anger, scared of losing her if the Drake family decided I wasn't fit to raise a Drake heir. Scared of everything except the one thing I should have been scared of. That my fear would hurt the 2 people I cared about most. I pulled out more photos, showing him our life together. The modest 2-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood where we'd lived for the past 4 years. Luna's bedroom that we'd painted together, with the mural of the solar system that we'd spent 3 weekends creating, her painting the planets while I did the stars, both of us covered in paint and laughing. Pictures of us at the library, at the park, at the planetarium on her 5th birthday. Our life wasn't glamorous, I said. We didn't have much money. I built my consultancy from nothing. It's successful enough to pay our bills and provide a comfortable life, but we're not wealthy. We shop at thrift stores and find treasures in second-hand bookshops. We make pancakes on Saturday mornings with experimental ingredients that Luna insists on adding, and most of them turn out terrible, but occasionally we stumble on something genius. We take the bus to the zoo and pack peanut butter sandwiches instead of buying expensive concessions. It's a simple life, but it was a happy life. Was. Ethan caught the past tense immediately. Was, I confirmed, my voice dropping. Until 3 months ago, when everything fell apart. Ethan's entire demeanor shifted, the grief and anger pushed aside by immediate concern. What happened 3 months ago? You said Luna was fine, that she was healthy. Luna is fine, I assured him quickly. Physically, she's perfectly healthy. But I'm not, Ethan. And that's why I'm really here. I watched understanding dawn on his face, watched him start to put together the pieces, my pale complexion, the dark circles under, my eyes, the way my hands trembled slightly, the fact that I'd disappeared for 6 years and suddenly showed up asking for help. 3 months ago, I said quietly, I started getting really sick. And that sickness is about to cost me everything, including our daughter. What do you mean, sick? Ethan was already standing, that protective instinct I remembered so well immediately taking over. What's wrong? How serious is it? I gestured for him to sit back down, needing to explain this carefully, needing him to understand the full scope of what had brought me to his office today. It started gradually, I began. At first I thought it was just stress, exhaustion from juggling single parenthood and running my business. I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't slept at all, my joints aching, like I was twice my age. I'd get these mysterious rashes that would appear and disappear without explanation, fevers that would spike randomly and then vanish just as quickly. "And you didn't see a doctor?" Ethan asked, his CEO voice creeping back in. That tone he used when he thought someone was being inefficient or illogical. "I saw 3 doctors," I corrected. "The first 2 told me it was stress and prescribed anxiety medication. The third one actually ran proper tests." I pulled out medical documents from my folder, handing them to Ethan. "Lupus. Systemic lupus erythematosus, to be exact. It's an autoimmune condition where my immune system attacks my own body, joints, skin, organs, blood cells. It's unpredictable and incurable, but it's manageable with the right treatment protocol." Ethan scanned the documents with the same focused intensity he'd brought to Luna's photos, his analytical mind clearly processing the medical terminology and implications. "These medications," he said, pointing to a list on one of the pages, "these are serious immunosuppressants. The side effects alone are brutal," I finished. "Fatigue makes it hard to get out of bed some mornings, nausea that makes eating difficult, dizziness, weakness, and that's just from the medications. The disease itself causes joint pain, exhaustion, cognitive fog. Some days I feel almost normal. Other days I can barely function." "How long have you been on treatment?" Ethan asked, still studying the medical records. 2 months. They started me on an aggressive protocol to try to get the inflammation under control quickly. I took a shaky breath. "I tried to manage it all on my own at first. I reduced my client load to the bare minimum needed to pay bills. I arranged for my neighbor to pick Luna up from school on days when I knew I'd be too sick to drive. I thought I could handle it the same way I'd handled everything else for the past 6 years, alone, without asking for help, without admitting I couldn't do it all." "But you couldn't," Ethan said quietly. "No, I couldn't." The admission felt like a failure, even though I knew it was just reality. 7 weeks ago, I was making Luna's breakfast before school. One minute I was standing at the counter pouring orange juice, and the next minute I was on the floor. I'd collapsed without warning, just blacked out completely. Ethan's face went pale. "And Luna was 6 years old and had to call 911 by herself," I said, and my voice cracked. "She remembered everything I'd taught her about emergencies. She called, gave them our address, told them her mommy had fallen down and wouldn't wake up. And then she sat on the floor next to me, holding my hand, talking to me even though I couldn't respond, telling me it was going to be okay until the paramedics arrived." I watched Ethan's hands ball into fists, his jaw clenching tight. "She shouldn't have had to do that. She's 6 years old, Skylar. She should be worried about playground games and learning to read, not calling ambulances for her mother." "I know," I whispered. "Believe me, I know." That morning, waking up in the hospital and seeing her little face, so brave, but so scared, that was when I realized I couldn't keep doing this alone. I'd been so focused on protecting my pride and avoiding judgment that I'd put Luna in a position where she had to be the adult while I was unconscious on our kitchen floor. Ethan pulled out another document from the folder, the hospital report from that admission. "They kept you for 3 days, for observation and to adjust my medications. They wanted to make sure I was stable, that the collapse was a one-time incident and not a sign of something more serious." I paused, knowing the next part was crucial, but being hospitalized triggered something I hadn't anticipated, something I hadn't even known was possible. "What?" Ethan looked up from the report, wariness creeping into his expression. "There was a social worker at the hospital who filed a report with Child Protective Services." I pulled out the next document, official letterhead that made my hands shake every time I looked at it. It's standard procedure when a single parent is hospitalized with a chronic condition and there's a young child involved. The social worker wasn't trying to be cruel or judgmental. She was just doing her job, making sure Luna had adequate care and support systems in place. Ethan took the CPS report, and I watched his face grow more grave with each paragraph he read. They opened an investigation. They interviewed me in the hospital. They talked to Luna's school. They spoke with my neighbor who helps with childcare. They reviewed my financial records, my medical prognosis, and my support network. I felt tears building again, but forced them back. And they found exactly what I already knew. I'm a single mother with no family. My parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. I'm an only child. My closest friend moved to another state last year for a job opportunity. My neighbor is wonderful and helps when she can, but she works full-time and has her own family. I have no emergency contacts except her, no backup plan if I become incapacitated again, no safety net if my condition worsens. Surely there are options, Ethan said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Home health aides, nanny services. I looked into all of that, I interrupted. A live-in nanny would cost $4,500 a month, plus room and board. Even with my business, I can't afford that, especially not with mounting medical bills that insurance only partially covers. And the agencies were clear that even with a nanny, CPS would still have concerns because I'd still be the primary caregiver during times when I might not be capable. They'd still question whether Luna's environment is stable enough. Ethan set down the CPS report and picked up the next document, the one I'd been carrying like a death sentence for the past 3 weeks. The official letter with its bureaucratic language and devastating implications. I watched his eyes move across the page, saw his expression shift from concern to alarm to barely controlled anger. Not anger at me this time, but anger at the situation, at the system, at the impossible position we'd all been placed in. "They're going to take her," he said flatly, looking up at me. "Unless you can demonstrate stable family support and adequate care arrangements within," he checked the date on the letter, "within 3 weeks from when this was sent. Which means you have less than 2 weeks left now." 10 days, I confirmed, my voice barely audible. "I have 10 days to prove that Luna has a family who can provide care while I undergo intensive treatment. 10 days to demonstrate a support system that doesn't exist. 10 days before they place my daughter, our daughter, in emergency foster care." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. Emergency foster care. Luna, who'd never spent a night away from me, except for carefully planned sleepovers, at friends' houses, would be removed from her home and placed with strangers. She'd be taken from her school, her friends, her room with its hand-painted solar system on the walls. She'd be put into a system that, despite everyone's best intentions, could traumatize her in ways that might never fully heal. "I spent 2 weeks trying everything," I continued, needing him to understand. "That coming here hadn't been my first choice. It had been my last resort. I reached out to everyone I could think of, distant cousins I haven't spoken to in years, former colleagues who might remember me, friends from college who I'd lost touch with. I applied for every assistance program and support service available. I consulted with 3 different family law attorneys, trying to find some legal loophole or option I hadn't considered. And," Ethan prompted, "and nothing. No one was in a position to take on the responsibility of caring for a 6-year-old, indefinitely while I go through treatment that could last months or even years. The assistance programs have waiting lists that are 6 months long. The legal experts all said the same thing. CPS has broad authority to remove children from unstable situations, and without family support, I don't have a strong case to fight it." I leaned forward, needing him to see how serious this was, how desperate I'd become. So I did what I swore I'd never do. "I searched for you online. And what did you find?" Ethan asked quietly. "I found that Drake Industries has become one of the most successful technology companies in the Pacific Northwest. I found articles about billion-dollar deals and revolutionary patents, and humanitarian initiatives funding schools in developing countries. I found your face in business magazines and technology conferences, always serious, always focused, always alone." I pulled up an article on my phone, showing him a profile piece from a business journal published 6 months ago. "This interview, you said something that broke my heart all over again. The reporter asked about your personal life, and you said, 'I learned early that you can't build an empire and maintain meaningful personal relationships. Something has to give, and I chose my company.' I chose success over everything else, and I live with that choice every day. Ethan looked at his own words on the screen, and something painful crossed his face. I meant that when I said it. After you left, after I spent months looking for you and finally gave up, I threw myself completely into work. I told myself that relationships were distractions I couldn't afford, that I was better off alone, focused entirely on building something that mattered, and I built exactly what I set out to build. A company worth billions, technology that's changing lives, a legacy that will outlast me. He paused, his voice dropping. But reading that quote now, after learning I have a daughter I never knew about, it sounds hollow, like I was just making excuses for being alone, because being alone felt safer than risking that kind of pain again. I took the choice away from you, I said softly. I made you think you had to choose between empire and family, when maybe you could have had both. Maybe knowing about Luna would have changed everything. Maybe you would have restructured your priorities, found balance, realized that success means nothing without someone to share it with. Or maybe I would have resented her. Ethan said, brutally honest. Maybe I would have been a terrible father, spread too thin and emotionally unavailable. Maybe your instinct to keep her from me was right, even if your execution was wrong. I don't believe that, I said firmly. The man I married, the man I fell in love with, he would have been an incredible father. And I think that man is still in there somewhere, underneath all the armor you've built to protect yourself from being hurt again. Ethan stood abruptly, walking back to the windows, his shoulders tense, with the weight of everything I'd dumped on him in the past hour. So let me make sure I understand the situation correctly. You kept my daughter from me for 6 years. Now you're sick with a chronic condition that makes it difficult to care for her. Child Protective Services is threatening to remove her from your custody in 10 days unless you can prove she has family support. And you've come to me, the father you deliberately kept in the dark, to ask me to suddenly step up and save her from foster care. Yes, I said simply, because there was no point in sugarcoating it. That's exactly what I'm asking. I know I have no right to ask you for anything after what I've done. I know this is impossible and unfair, and that I'm basically asking you to upend your entire life for a child you've never met. But Ethan, she's your daughter. She has your eyes and your intelligence and your curiosity about the world. She's been asking about you since she was 4 years old. She's made you 7 Father's Day cards that are sitting in a box under her bed, waiting for the day when she can finally give them to you. I stood as well, needing him to see the desperation in my eyes, needing him to understand that I wouldn't be here if there was any other option. I'm not asking you to forgive me for keeping her from you. I'm not asking you to forget the 6 years I stole from you both. I'm asking you to save our daughter from being taken by the state. I'm asking you to be the father she deserves, the father I never gave you the chance to be. I'm asking you to look past your anger at me and see a 6-year-old girl who needs you more than she's ever needed anyone. Ethan turned to face me, and in his eyes I saw a war being waged, anger and hurt battling against paternal instinct and the pull of a child he'd never met, but who shared his blood, his eyes, his very DNA. If I do this, he said slowly, each word carefully measured, you need to understand something, Skylar. This isn't temporary. This isn't me playing father until you're better and then disappearing from her life. If I step up now, if I take custody to keep her out of foster care, I'm in it forever. I will be her father, really, truly, permanently. That means shared custody arrangements, holidays split between us, my involvement in every major decision about her life and education and future. Can you accept that? Can you accept sharing her with me after 6 years of having her all to yourself? Yes, I said without hesitation, my voice strong despite the tears streaming down my face. Whatever's best for Luna, that's all that matters now. If sharing custody with you means she stays out of foster care, if it means she finally gets to have her father in her life, then yes. Absolutely yes. Ethan studied my face for a long moment, searching for any sign of doubt or deception. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he gave a single sharp nod. Then we have a deal. But I need proof first. Of course, I said quickly. I brought her medical records, her birth certificate, school reports, everything you'd need to verify I need a paternity test, Ethan interrupted, his voice brooking no argument. Not because I don't believe you. I can see myself in her eyes in that photograph. But because we'll need legal documentation for the custody proceedings. The courts won't accept our word alone. I understand. I can bring Luna to any doctor you choose, whenever you want. Tomorrow, Ethan decided immediately, already pulling out his phone. I'll have my physician make arrangements for the first thing in the morning. It's a simple cheek swab, completely painless. Results typically take 5 to 7 business days, but I'll have them expedited. We should know by early next week. Thank you, I whispered. Ethan set his phone down and fixed me with an intense stare. I also want my attorney to review all the legal paperwork. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. I want custody arrangements that protect Luna's interests above everything else, not arrangements designed just to expedite the process or satisfy CPS requirements. Of course, whatever you think is best. And, Skylar? His voice softened slightly, becoming less CEO and more human. I want to meet her, before any paperwork, before any legal proceedings, before any of this becomes official. I want to meet my daughter. I want to look her in the eyes and talk to her and let her get to know me. I don't want her first impression of me to be the man who's taking custody because mommy's sick. I want her to meet me as her father, as someone who wants to be in her life because she matters, not because of a deadline from Child Protective Services. The request was so reasonable, so thoughtful, so exactly what Luna would need that I felt a surge of relief wash over me. This was the Ethan I'd fallen in love with, the man who thought about other people's feelings, who considered the emotional implications of his actions, who led with his heart even when his head was telling him to protect himself. Where? I asked. When? You mentioned she loves the planetarium. Is there one here in Seattle she'd enjoy? The Pacific Science Center, I said immediately. They just opened a new space exploration exhibit last month. She's been begging me to take her, but I've been too sick to drive. This Saturday, Ethan decided, checking his calendar on his phone. 10 in the morning. That gives us 4 days. 4 days for me to prepare for meeting my daughter. 4 days for you to prepare her for meeting me. 4 days for both of us to figure out how to do this without traumatizing her. Saturday at 10, I agreed. What should I tell her? How do I explain? Tell her the truth, Ethan said firmly. Age-appropriate truth, but truth nonetheless. Tell her that you finally told me about her and that I want to meet her more than anything in the world. Tell her that you made a mistake by not telling me sooner, but that I'm here now and I want to be her father. Tell her. His voice caught slightly. Tell her that I'm sorry I missed 6 years of her life, but I promise I'll be there for everything from now on. Every birthday, every school play, every scraped knee, every triumph and failure and ordinary Tuesday. All of it. Fresh tears spilled down my cheeks. I'll tell her. One more thing, Ethan said, and his voice took on a harder edge again. You need to understand something clearly, Skylar. I'm furious with you. Absolutely furious. You stole 6 years from me. 6 years of my daughter's life that I can never get back. 6 birthdays where I didn't get to see her blow out candles and make wishes. 6 first days of school where I didn't get to take photos and feel that mixture of pride and terror that she was growing up. 6 years of bedtime stories I didn't get to read, nightmares I didn't get to comfort, questions I didn't get to answer. He paused, his hands gripping the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Every milestone, every moment, every memory. You took all of that from me. And no matter what happens from here, no matter how good a father I become, I can never get those years back. They're gone forever because you decided I wasn't worthy of knowing my own daughter existed. I know, I whispered. And I'm so sorry. I don't want your apologies, Ethan said flatly. Apologies don't give me back what I've lost. But I also know. He stopped, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say. I also know that single parents make impossible decisions sometimes. I know that my father said terrible things to you that planted doubts in your mind. I know that I was so consumed by work that I probably made. You feel unimportant and unnecessary. I failed you as a husband, Skylar. I was so focused on meeting my father's expectations and building my Empire that I didn't see what it was costing me until you were gone. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that looked almost like understanding. So here's the truth. We both failed. You failed by not trusting me enough to tell me about Luna. I failed by not creating the kind of marriage where you felt safe telling me. We both made mistakes that hurt each other and, more importantly, hurt our daughter. But Luna didn't make any mistakes. She's completely innocent in all of this. And from this moment forward, she comes first. Not your guilt, not my anger, not our hurt feelings or complicated history. Luna comes first in every decision, every conversation, every plan we make. Agreed? Agreed, I said firmly. Then go home, Ethan said, but his tone was gentler now. Go home to our daughter. Tell her that her father wants to meet her. And Skylar? Tell her I said I can't wait. The drive back to Portland felt both endless and far too short. I needed time to process what had just happened, to prepare for the conversation I was about to have with Luna. But I also couldn't wait to tell her that the father she'd been asking about, dreaming about, making cards for, he wanted to meet her. He wanted to be her dad. My neighbor Caroline met me at the door with a knowing look. She'd been the one watching Luna during my hospital stays, picking her up from school on my bad days. She knew more about our situation than almost anyone. How did it go? She asked quietly while Luna was in the other room. He wants to meet her, I said, and saying it out loud made it real. Saturday. He's going to help us, Caroline. He's going to be her father. Caroline pulled me into a hug. Thank God, Skylar. She needs this. You both do. Luna came running out then, all wild hair and bright eyes. Mommy, you're home. Did you have a good day? I knelt down to her level, pulling her into my arms and breathing in the scent of her. Apple shampoo and playground dirt, and something uniquely Luna. I had a very important day, sweetheart, and I need to talk to you about something really good. Luna pulled back, studying my face with those two perceptive eyes. What is it? I took her hand and led her to the couch, pulling her into my lap even though she was getting big for it. She'd always be my baby, no matter how tall she grew. Remember how you've been asking about your daddy? I started. Luna went very still. Yes. Well, I went to see him today, in Seattle, and I told him about you. You did? Luna's voice was barely a whisper, filled with hope and fear in equal measure. I did. And Luna, sweetheart, he was so happy to learn about you. He looked at your pictures and asked me 100 questions about what you're like and what you love. And he said, my voice caught, he said he wants to meet you more than anything in the world. Luna's eyes went wide. Really? He really said that? Really, truly? He said he's sorry he missed the first 6 years, but he promises to be there for everything from now on. And he wants to meet you this Saturday at the Pacific Science Center. They have that new space exhibit you've been wanting to see. The one about Mars? Luna asked, excitement building in her voice. That exact one. Your daddy thought you'd like to see it together. For your first meeting, Luna was quiet for a long moment, processing. Finally she asked, what's he like, Mommy? Is he nice? He's wonderful, I said honestly. He's smart like you. He's curious about the world like you. And he has your eyes, or you have his. He's successful and busy, but he promised me that you would be the most important thing in his life. More important than his work. More important than anything. Does he know I love space? Luna asked. He does now. I told him all about your constellation paintings and your books, and how you want to be an astronaut when you grow up. He thought all of that was amazing. Luna smiled then, that gap-toothed smile that lit up my entire world. I need to get him a new card. The ones under my bed are old. I need to make a special one for Saturday. She scrambled off my lap and ran to her room, already planning. I sat there on the couch, listening to her rummage through her art supplies, and felt the weight of 6 years of secrets finally start to lift. That evening, after Luna was asleep with her newest card carefully placed on her nightstand, my phone rang. Ethan, she's asleep, he asked when I answered. Just now. She was so excited she could barely settle down. She made you a card. Actually, 3 cards. She kept deciding the first ones weren't good enough, and starting over. I heard something in his breath that might have been a laugh or emotion. Tell me about her day. What does she do after school? So I did. I told him how Luna had come home and immediately wanted to know everything about him. His favorite color, his favorite food, whether he liked books, whether he could draw. I answered what I could, filling in 6 years of gaps with the limited knowledge I had. She asked if you like stars, I told Ethan. I said I didn't know for certain, but that you're smart enough to appreciate them. I've never paid much attention to stars, Ethan admitted. But I suspect I'm about to learn everything about them. We talked for over an hour. Ethan asked questions I'd never expected. What time Luna wakes up, her morning routine, what makes her laugh, what scares her. He was taking notes, he admitted, wanting to know everything before Saturday. I accessed her school records, Ethan said. You gave permission when we signed the medical release forms. Her teacher says she's reading 3 grade levels ahead. She's been reading chapter books since she was 4, I confirmed. Her math scores are exceptional too. And her art teacher noted extraordinary spatial reasoning. He paused. I want her to have the best education, Skylar, whatever she needs, tutors, enrichment programs, specialized schools. I have resources that can give her opportunities. I know, I said, but Luna won't love you because you can buy her things. She'll love you because you show up, because you're present, because you care about what she thinks and feels. I can do both, Ethan said quietly. I can show up and also make sure she has every advantage. We talked about Saturday, the logistics, whether I should be there initially. We decided I'd come to make Luna feel safe, but I'd give them space to connect. What should I say when I meet her? Ethan asked, vulnerability creeping into his voice. The truth. Tell her you're happy to meet her. Tell her you're sorry it took so long. Luna responds to honesty. And if she doesn't like me? The question was asked lightly, but I heard the real fear. She's been waiting 6 years to meet you, Ethan. She already loves you. She just doesn't know you yet. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and crisp autumn air. Luna had been awake since dawn, changing her outfit 4 times before settling on jeans. And her favorite space shirt, the one with all the planets in order from the sun. Do I look okay? She asked for the 6th time, studying herself in the mirror. You look perfect, I assured her. But Luna, your daddy is going to love you no matter what you're wearing. You know that, right? I know, she said, smoothing down her shirt again. But this is important, Mommy. This is the most important day of my whole life. My heart squeezed at her words. 6 years old, and she understood the magnitude of this moment better than most adults would. The drive to Seattle felt eternal. Luna chattered nervously the entire way, asking the same questions repeatedly. What if he doesn't like me? What if I say something wrong? What if I'm not good enough? Luna Rose Hart, I said firmly, using her full name. You are brilliant and amazing. Your daddy already knows how special you are. Just be yourself. That's more than enough. We arrived at the Pacific Science Center 15 minutes early. I texted Ethan that we were there. His response came immediately, in the parking lot. Trying to remember how to breathe. We waited by the entrance, Luna clutching her card and bouncing on her toes. And then I saw him. Ethan walked toward us dressed casually, jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. But what struck me most was his face. Gone was the controlled CEO expression. He looked nervous and excited and terrified all at once. He looked like a father about to meet his daughter for the first time. He stopped about 10 feet away, seeming to realize that rushing forward might overwhelm her. Hi, he said gently. You must be Luna. I'm Luna, she confirmed. Then, after a pause, are you my daddy? I am, Ethan said, and his eyes filled with tears. I'm your daddy, Luna, and I am so happy to finally meet you. They stared at each other, both assessing the similarities. Ethan sees his eyes in his daughter's face. Luna seeing the eyes she saw in mirrors reflected in her father. You have my eyes, Luna said, wondering in her voice. I was just thinking the same thing, Ethan said with a smile. And you have your mom's beautiful hair. It's messy, Luna said, touching her curls self-consciously. It's perfect, Ethan corrected. Luna smiled then and took a tentative step forward. I made you a card. You did? She held it out. Ethan took it carefully, like it was made of glass, and read it slowly. I watched his composure crumble as he read Luna's words and saw her drawings. When he looked up, tears streamed down his face. Luna, he said, his voice thick. This is the most beautiful card anyone has ever given me. Thank you. I'm going to keep it forever. Really? Luna asked. Really? I'm going to frame it and put it where I can see it every single day. Luna's smile grew bigger. Even though you just met me. Even though I just met you, Ethan confirmed. You're my daughter. That makes you the most important person automatically. Cool, Luna said. Then, with childlike fearlessness, can I hug you? Please, Ethan said, his voice breaking. Luna ran to him, and Ethan dropped to his knees to catch her, pulling his daughter into his arms for the first time. They stayed like that for a long moment, both clinging to each other. I turned away to wipe my tears. When they pulled apart, Luna looked up seriously. Mommy said you didn't know about me, that it was her mistake, not yours. That's true, Ethan said. If I'd known, I would have been there from the very first day. I missed a lot, and I'm so sorry. But I promise you, Luna, I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Ever. Okay, Luna said, with simple childhood acceptance. Do you want to see the space exhibit now? Ethan laughed. I would love to. Will you teach me about the planets? I know everything about the planets, Luna said proudly, taking his hand. Did you know Jupiter has 79 moons? I did not know that, Ethan said. Tell me more. They walked into the center together, Luna chattering excitedly while Ethan listened with complete attention. I followed behind, giving them space but staying close. Inside, I watched them explore together. Luna pulled Ethan from exhibit to exhibit, explaining everything with enthusiasm. Ethan listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and looked at his daughter with obvious love and pride. At one point, Luna looked back at me sitting on a bench. She said something to Ethan, and they both walked over. Luna wants you to come explore with us, Ethan said. All together, Luna confirmed, grabbing both our hands. Like a family. That's what we are now, right? Ethan and I looked at each other over her head. Yes, I said softly. We're a family, Ethan agreed, squeezing Luna's hand. For 3 hours, that's exactly what we were. We explored together, watched Luna's face light up at the planetarium show, had lunch where Luna told Ethan about her constellation paintings and dreams of being an astronaut. Would you like to visit my office sometime? Ethan asked. See where I work? Meet engineers working on space technology? Really? Luna's eyes went wide. Really? In fact, I was hoping you might want to spend time in Seattle. I have a room that could be yours. We could decorate it however you want. Space theme, maybe? Luna looked at me uncertainly. Would that be okay, Mummy? That would be wonderful, I said. Your daddy and I want you to spend time with him. Will you visit? Can I come home too? Of course, Ethan said. You'll see your mum all the time. My house is your home too now. You belong there, because you're my daughter. Okay, Luna said. Can I really paint my room? Any color? Any color you want, Ethan confirmed. The paternity test results came back on Monday, exactly as we knew they would. 99.9% probability that Ethan Drake was Luna's biological father. By Wednesday, Ethan's lawyers had filed emergency custody paperwork. By Friday, we had a court date scheduled for the following week. But more importantly, Luna had spent the previous weekend in Seattle with her father, and it had been magical. Ethan sent me photos throughout the weekend. Luna in his kitchen making pancakes, her face scrunched in concentration. Luna in her new room, surrounded by paint swatches, arguing passionately for deep purple like a nebula. Luna at his office, wearing a visitor badge and hard hat, talking to engineers about robotic systems. And my favorite, Luna and Ethan on his balcony late Saturday night, both bundled in blankets, looking at stars through Luna's telescope. His caption, "She's teaching me about constellations. I've never been happier." When Ethan brought Luna home Sunday evening, she was vibrating with excitement, talking non-stop about everything they'd done. But she also hugged me extra tight and whispered, "I missed you, Mummy." "I missed you too, baby," I whispered back. "Did you have fun with your dad?" "So much fun," she said. "Mummy, he's really nice and really smart. And he says he loves me." "He does love you," I confirmed. "Very much. I love him too," Luna said. "Is that okay?" "Oh, sweetheart. That's more than okay. That's perfect." Over the next 2 weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. The court approved Ethan's emergency custody petition, with Luna primarily staying with him while I underwent intensive treatment, with generous visitation for me and a plan to transition to shared custody once my health stabilized. Child Protective Services closed their case, satisfied that Luna had stable family support. I started my new treatment protocol. The first week was brutal. I spent more time in bed than out of it, exhausted and nauseated. But knowing Luna was safe with Ethan, knowing she was happy and cared for, made it bearable. Ethan sent updates multiple times daily. Photos, videos, little stories about Luna's latest questions. He set up video calls every evening so Luna and I could talk before bedtime. Every time I saw them together, Ethan reading her stories, helping with homework, or just listening as she explained scientific concepts, I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief, gratitude, and healing. Not just physical, but emotional healing from 6 years of carrying secrets alone. 3 weeks after that first meeting, I was feeling well enough to visit Seattle for a weekend. Ethan had invited me to stay at his house so Luna could wake up with both parents there. Walking into Ethan's home for the first time was strange. The penthouse was beautiful, modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows and stunning city views. But what struck me most was how it had changed to accommodate Luna. The formerly minimalist space now had splashes of color everywhere. Luna's paintings covered one entire living room wall. A telescope stood by the balcony windows. The coffee table held stacks of children's books about space and science. Everywhere I looked were signs of a little girl making this place her home. "She's done some redecorating," Ethan said, appearing beside me with a smile. "It's wonderful," I said honestly. "You've made her feel like she belongs here." "She does belong here," Ethan said simply. "Come see her room." Luna's room was a masterpiece. 3 walls painted soft blue, but the 4th wall, behind her bed, was deep purple. On that purple wall, an artist had painted a stunning mural of the night sky, complete with constellations in silver that glowed softly in the dark. "It's perfect," I breathed. "She designed most of it herself," Ethan said with obvious pride. "Told the artist exactly where each constellation should go, corrected her when star patterns were slightly wrong." Luna came running in, throwing herself into my arms. "Mummy, you're here. Do you like my room? See that constellation? That's the one I invented, the one from Daddy's card. Daddy said we should put it on my wall so I can see it every night. It's beautiful, Luna. Everything is beautiful." That evening, we had dinner together, take-out Thai food that Ethan remembered was my favorite. Luna sat between us, talking about her new school, the kids, her teacher, the chess club Ethan had signed her up for where she'd already beaten older kids. After dinner, we curled up on the couch to watch a documentary about Mars. Luna fell asleep with her head on Ethan's shoulder and her feet in my lap. Ethan and I looked at each other over her sleeping form. "She's happy," I said softly. "Thank you for making her so happy." "I should be thanking you," Ethan said, "for bringing her to me, for trusting me with her." These past few weeks with Luna have been the best of my life. She's changed everything. She's made me realize what actually matters. "What matters?" I asked. "This," he said simply, looking at Luna, her, being her father. "All the money and success and business achievements, they're nothing compared to this." I nodded, tears blurring my vision. "I was so wrong about everything." "We were both wrong," Ethan said gently. "I prioritized work over everything else. I didn't fight for you when you left. I let my father's opinions matter more than my own heart. We both made mistakes. But we have a chance now to do better. For her. For her, I agreed. We carefully transferred Luna to bed. She stirred slightly, mumbling, "Love you, Mummy. Love you, Daddy. We love you too, sweetheart," I whispered. In the hallway, Ethan and I stood in awkward silence. "Thank you for staying this weekend," he said finally. "It means a lot to Luna. And to me. You're welcome here any time. Your family too." "Family," I repeated, and the word felt bigger now than it had been when it was just Luna and me. Over the next few months, life transformed in ways I'd never imagined possible. My health gradually improved as the treatment began working. I had more good days than bad days. I could work more consistently, could be more present when Luna visited Portland. And with every improvement, Ethan and I worked on transitioning to a true shared custody arrangement. But more than logistics, something deeper was happening. Ethan and I were becoming friends again, not the romantic partners we'd been 7 years ago, but something different. Something built on mutual respect and shared love for our extraordinary daughter. We texted about Luna's latest achievements and concerns. We coordinated her schedule and activities. We made parenting decisions together as a team. And sometimes, late at night after Luna was asleep, we'd sit on Ethan's balcony and just talk about our mistakes, about our regrets, about the different people we'd become over the past 6 years, about whether we'd done permanent damage to Luna by starting her life this way, or whether she'd ultimately be stronger for it. "She's resilient," Ethan said one evening, 6 months after that first meeting. "She's adapted to having 2 homes, splitting her time, suddenly having a father in her life, and she's thrived. That's all you, Skylar. You raised a strong, confident, emotionally intelligent child." "We're raising her," I corrected. Present tense. "Together." "Together," Ethan agreed, and something in the way he said it made my heart skip. Now, before we continue with how this story unfolds, I want to pause and ask you something. If you've made it this far in our story, if Luna's journey has touched your heart, please hit that like button right now. And drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done in Skylar's situation. Would you have told Ethan about Luna from the beginning? Do you think she made the right choice coming to him when she did? I read every single comment, and I want to know what you're thinking. Your engagement helps us share these important stories with more people who need to hear them. 4 years passed. 4 years of Luna splitting her time between Seattle and Portland, of birthday parties, where both parents attended, of school conferences where Ethan and I sat side by side. 4 years of watching our daughter grow from a curious 6-year-old into a remarkable 10-year-old who exceeded every expectation. Luna was still obsessed with space. Her dream of becoming an astronaut had only grown stronger. But she'd also discovered a passion for robotics and advanced mathematics. She spent hours in Ethan's office working with his engineers on projects that seemed impossible for someone her age. She'd taught herself 3 programming languages. She'd won regional science competitions. She was already taking classes at a level that made her teachers shake their heads in amazement. But more than her intelligence, Luna had become an incredible human being. She volunteered at animal shelters. She tutored younger kids in math. She stood up against bullying with a quiet courage that made both Ethan and me incredibly proud. She'd taken the complicated circumstances of her early life and somehow emerged more empathetic, more understanding, more capable of seeing nuance in difficult situations. Last month was Father's Day, a day that had taken on profound meaning in our family. Luna had prepared something special, something she'd been planning for weeks. When Ethan arrived at our Portland apartment that morning, Luna met him at the door with a wrapped package. "I have something for you," she said, her eyes bright with anticipation. Ethan opened it carefully, and I watched his face as he realized what he was holding. It was a handmade album, beautifully bound, with "My Daddy" written on the cover in Luna's careful handwriting. Inside were the 7 Father's Day cards she'd made before they'd ever met, the ones that had sat in a box under her bed for years, waiting for a father who didn't know she existed. Luna had preserved them all, arranged them chronologically, and added captions. explaining what was happening in her life when she'd made each one. "These are for the years I made them," Luna explained as Ethan slowly turned pages, tears streaming down his face. "Even though you didn't get them then, they were always for you, Daddy. I want you to have them now, because even when you didn't know about me, I knew about you. And I loved you." Ethan pulled Luna into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world, which to him she was. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "Thank you for never giving up on me, for making these cards year after year, for believing I'd find you someday." "You didn't find me," Luna corrected with a smile. "Mommy brought me to you. But that's okay. Sometimes people need help finding their way home." I had to turn away then, overwhelmed by the beauty of the moment, by the wisdom of our daughter, by the impossible grace with which she'd accepted the complicated circumstances of her existence. Just last week, something remarkable happened that showed me how far we'd all come. Ethan and I were both at Luna's school for her science fair presentation. She'd created a detailed model of a theoretical Mars colony, complete with biodomes, water recycling, systems and solutions to problems that actual space agencies were still working on solving. It was brilliant and complex, and so quintessentially Luna. After her presentation, as we walked to the parking lot together, the three of us, one of Luna's teachers stopped us. "Your daughter is exceptional," she said, smiling warmly. "You must be so proud of her." "We are," Ethan and I said in unison, then smiled at each other. "She's lucky to have such supportive parents," the teacher continued. "You can tell she comes from a loving home. That kind of security and confidence, that only comes from knowing you're loved unconditionally. A loving home. After everything we'd been through, after all the mistakes and secrets, and pain, a stranger was telling us that Luna came from a loving home. Not two separate homes, but a home, singular. Because despite the complexity of our arrangement, despite the fact that Ethan and I would never be together romantically again, we'd built something real and stable for our daughter. That night, after Luna was asleep, Ethan and I found ourselves on that balcony again, looking at the stars the way we'd done dozens of times over the past 4 years. "Do you regret it?" I asked suddenly, a question I'd been afraid to voice. "All of it? The way things happened?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him carefully considering his answer. "I regret the years I missed with Luna," he said finally. "I regret that she grew up without me for 6 years. I regret that we hurt each other, that our marriage ended the way it did. Those regrets are real, and I carry them with me." He paused, looking up at the stars that Luna had taught him to identify. "But do I regret where we ended up? Do I regret having Luna in my life now? Never. Not for a single second. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, Skylar. She changed everything. She made me realize that all the success in the world means nothing if you have no one to share it with. She told me something the other day," I said softly. "Something that made me think." "What did she say?" "She asked if you were still angry at me for not telling you about her sooner. I told her that you were angry at first, very angry, but that you'd chosen to forgive me and move forward." I smiled at the memory. And you know what she said? She said, "That's good, Mummy, because you made a mistake, but you fixed it. And mistakes don't define us. What we do after the mistake, that's what really matters." Ethan laughed softly, shaking his head. 10 years old and wiser than most adults I know. "She's right, though," I said. "I made a terrible mistake keeping her from you. But when it mattered most, when she really needed help, I swallowed my pride and did what I should have done 6 years earlier." "I told you the truth, and I'm glad you did," Ethan said. "Even though it was painful, even though it forced me to confront things I'd been avoiding. I'm grateful, because now I have Luna. Now I get to be her father. Now I get to watch her grow into whoever she's meant to become." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Ethan said something that surprised me. "I've been thinking about something lately, something I want to run by you." "What is it?" "I'm considering stepping back from Drake Industries. Not leaving completely, but transitioning to a less demanding role. Maybe chairman instead of CEO. I've spent the past 4 years trying to balance being present for Luna with running a billion-dollar company, and I'm starting to realize that I'm still making the same mistake I made 7 years ago, choosing work over what really matters. Ethan, you don't have to do that, I said quickly. You've been an amazing father. Luna knows you love her. I know I don't have to, Ethan said. But I want to. Luna's only going to be young once. These years, from 10 to 18, they're crucial. I don't want to miss them because I was too busy with board meetings and conference calls. I want to be there for every science fair, every chess tournament, every moment that matters. Something in my chest tightened with emotion. This was the Ethan I'd fallen in love with, the man who could see what truly mattered, who was brave enough to make hard choices, who led with his heart. She'd love that, I said. Having more time with you. There's something else, Ethan said, and now his voice held a note of nervousness that surprised me. Something I've been wanting to talk to you about for a while now, but I wasn't sure if it was too soon or if I was reading things wrong. What is it? I asked, my heart suddenly beating faster. Ethan turned to face me fully, and in the moonlight, I could see the same intensity in his eyes that I'd seen 7 years ago when he'd proposed on the Seattle waterfront. These past 4 years, getting to know you again as Luna's mother, as my CO parent, as my friend, it's made me realize something. We're different people than we were 7 years ago. We've both grown and changed and learned from our mistakes. But Skylar, he stopped, seeming to search for the right words. I still love you. Maybe I never stopped. And I know we said we'd never get back together, that too much had happened. But I'm starting to wonder if maybe we were wrong about that. If maybe, after all we've been through, we could try again, not as the people we were, but as the people we've become. I stared at him, completely blindsided. In 4 years of Kyo parenting, Ethan had never once suggested we might be anything more than friends raising a child together. Ethan, you don't have to answer now, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I just wanted you to know how I feel, that these past 4 years, watching you be an incredible mother to Luna, seeing your strength. As you fought through your illness, getting to know you all over again, it's made me fall in love with you again, or maybe realize I never fell out of love with you in the first place. Before I could respond, before I could process what he'd just said, we heard a sound from inside, Luna's voice, calling out for one of us. Ethan stood quickly, and the moment shattered like glass. We should check on her, he said. Yes, I agreed, my mind spinning. We went inside together, finding Luna sitting up in bed, half asleep. I had a dream, she murmured, as Ethan sat beside her. We were all together, like a real family, all living in the same house. Was it just a dream? Ethan and I exchanged a look over her head, the question hanging in the air between us, weighted with possibility. Maybe not just a dream, Ethan said softly, tucking her back in. Maybe something we can talk about. Would you like that? All of us together? More than anything, Luna whispered, already drifting back to sleep. And there it was, the question that had been unspoken for 4 years, suddenly voiced by our daughter in the innocent honesty of half sleep. Could we be more than Kyo parents? Could we be a family in the traditional sense? Could Ethan and I find our way back to each other after everything we'd been through? As Ethan and I stood in Luna's doorway, watching her sleep peacefully, I realized that our story wasn't over. It was still being written. And maybe, just maybe, the next chapter would surprise us all. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think Skylar and Ethan should try again? Can a love that was broken be rebuilt into something even stronger? Remember, mistakes don't define us. What we do after the mistake, that's what really matters. It's never too late to tell the truth. It's never too late to ask for forgiveness. It's never too late to choose love over fear. Luna taught us that, and she was absolutely right. Until next time, keep believing in second chances. Keep choosing truth over fear, and keep shining your light, even when the darkness feels overwhelming. Because we're all made of stardust, And stars are meant to shine.